It's time for Michigan's newest sports talk show, Mitten Madness.
And here he goes. Defense win championship.
Michigan sports talk from here in Battle Creek. The latest stories, the biggest games, all across the Mitten State.
That's not something to play with.
Streaming live and on demand on the 95.3 WBCK app. Here are your hosts, Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes.
Hello there and good morning. It is Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. My name is Jacob Harrison. That is Da'Jzon Hughes, and we are going to talk Michigan sports for the next hour. We'll also be paying a little bit of attention to March Madness. It's been an exciting NCAA tournament this year. Brackets busted everywhere you go. My South bracket looks like a Christmas tree with all the red and green in it. But we're making the best of it. We're going to continue to break everything down that has happened and will happen. And do keep in mind as we talk about that here in this first segment that we do not know what has happened in either Michigan game yet. We record on Friday mornings, even earlier this weekend. And so we'll talk about that from the perspectives that we're able to. And we'll get into things here in just a bit. But first, DJ, how's it going, man?
Oh, life's pretty good, man. I mean, Michigan is in the Sweet 16 like I predicted they would be, so that makes me extremely happy. And sports are sports, man. So I cannot be upset. Tigers baseball back off and running, which we'll get into later as well. And the weather's getting nice again. So smiles on the faces.
There we go. I mean, outside, as long as I ignore the Aaron Rodgers drama, life's good.
You ain't been doing that?
I've been trying to, but every time I turn around, it's either Aaron Rodgers or it's Jalen Milroe to the Steelers, and neither of those sound enticing.
You would think, being a Packers fan, that I would have all kinds of Aaron Rodgers stuff. I see none of it. I'm so far away from that.
Aren't you lucky?
I'm not having it. I'm ignoring that big time.
Like I said, 3 years ago, I was all here for it. I really wanted Rodgers in Pittsburgh. Not anymore. That said, Alabama looked really, really good against BYU. And that's a little bit of an understatement considering they set an NCAA tournament record for threes in a game with 25. 10 came from Sears, who had 34 points on the game. So they move on to the Elite Eight. DJ, I already have half the Elite Eight set in my bracket. I've got half the Elite Eight correct, and I only need the ones and twos in the other brackets to get the full Elite Eight, and it will not matter because my bracket is full of holes. How is yours looking as we near the Elite Eight?
Mine is actually looking pretty good. I only have two of my Elite Eight teams that are no longer rocking. I picked Wisconsin to beat your Alabama Crimson Tide, who got beat by BYU. Utah. And then I had St. John's, who ended up getting beat by Arkansas, which honestly wasn't a bad loss if you watch the way that Arkansas played last night in their game and how they pushed Florida to the brink. No, not Florida. Texas Tech to the brink. They were a team that was poised to make a very great run in the tournament. It just didn't work out. So other than that, all my other teams are alive. So my bracket does still look pretty good.
Yeah, that is a game that sounds so entertaining. I probably will not be able to watch it with all this moving stuff that I'm doing. But Florida, Texas Tech, like if you can't get up for that, you know what I mean? That's what it's all about. Two teams that are hungry. They're not quite as, I don't know, historically dynastic as some of the other squads that are left to compete in the Elite Eight. When you consider Duke, Michigan, Auburn, Michigan State, those types of schools. Texas Tech, a little bit more of an underdog. I know they've been to the pinnacle of this thing a few times. Florida coming through the SEC and beating all the best teams in the SEC to get to where they're at, earning that one seed, and they've looked really, really good all the way through. Let's talk about the games that we do know what happened in them. We can start with that Alabama and Duke matchup. We know Alabama, things were a little bit tight throughout the game, but then Alabama was able to pull away because they were hitting just so many threes. Duke wins by 7 over Arizona, and now we have a Elite Eight matchup between arguably, kind of the 1B to Auburn's 1A in this tournament. Duke taking on an Alabama squad that has not looked super great over the past month, but they're coming off their best game of basketball in over a month. What are your expectations for that matchup? I know you expect my Tide to lose, but beyond that,
I won't dive super far into it because we are going to pick this game later on. But for me, it's more about what Duke has rather than a lack of what Alabama has. I think Alabama's a very good basketball team. I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I think that they are a complete team. But when you look across the floor and you got to defend Cooper Flagg,
good luck.
It's good luck for everybody.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. I think there's maybe one other player in the country that can truly give him a run for who he is, and that's Janai Broome, and he plays for Auburn, not Alabama. So it's one of those things where you just don't have a lot to compete with what's on the other side. And it's not because you aren't good. It's because he is a generational player.
Yeah.
And I use that word lightly. That is not a word for everyone. He's a generational player. Wemby is generational. LeBron is generational. The other teams in the country don't have a generational player on their team. So that is kind of the point for me is Cooper Flagg changes games. Caleb Love last night, 35 points for Arizona. Cooper, 36-7.
Yeah.
30.6 rebounds, 7 assists. Like, he changes the game in every aspect and forces you to pay attention to him at all times, which just opens up the rest of the floor. That's really kind of what gives Duke the edge.
Yeah, Alabama really relies on Mark Sears, but it's kind of similar to past star players for Alabama, John Petty and other guys like him, where if they were not playing perfectly, that Alabama was kind of set up to fall, and this Alabama squad so heavily relying on Mark Sears, because keep in mind, Alabama's a team that is built to play defense, and they gave up 88 points to BYU. Now, BYU has scored pretty well in all of their games so far, but that to me, as somebody who keeps up with what Alabama's doing, is alarming to give up that many points. But again, Duke gave up 93 as well, so it could be a bit of a shootout, but we'll see how we pick that game a little bit later. Mentioned the Florida-Texas game where you've got the two squads that I don't want to diminish the efforts of the more established programs, but these are two of the teams that you don't see coming preseason. Every other team that's in the argument right now, even in the games that we haven't seen happen yet for us, those are teams that you expect to be here. Florida and Texas, they've taken the path less traveled.
Florida
to a degree.
Florida, I wouldn't say so. They did play in a tough SEC. It wasn't as tough as it was made out to be, but there were a lot of very good teams in the SEC, as a lot of them are still hanging around. Sweet 16, Elite 8. So not taking that part away from them, but their tournament run hasn't necessarily been chalk. You know what I'm saying? They've
had to play good teams. I mean, from a preseason perspective. I don't think a lot of people thought Florida was going to be a 1 seed, was going to do the business they've done. I don't beat UConn in the tourney.
I don't think anybody thought. Well, I think you could have picked almost anybody to beat UConn this year. They were not good. I think what it really came down to was nobody expected the SEC to be as good as they were.
Right.
So I think that kind of inflated some things. I think that if you told some people preseason that Florida would be somewhere between a 3 and 6 seed, they'd be like, that sounds reasonable.
Exactly.
But then the SEC was what it was this year and was inflated. That pushed them up to a 1 seed. If we actually think about it, 2 1 seeds from the SEC, 1 from the Big 12, 1 from the ACC. I don't think the Big 12 deserves theirs.
Houston?
Well, excuse me. I only say that because of who Duke is. Duke is actually that good.
Yeah, Duke's beyond being an ACC school. They're Duke.
Exactly. But the Big Ten's better than the Big 12 this year in basketball. But the Big Ten just wasn't respected because they actually all beat each other because they were actually good teams.
They fell into the trap that the Big 12 falls into in football.
Yeah. So then the Big 12 kind of got elevated a little higher. But if you see all of the Big Ten teams that made it in were all about a 6 seed or higher. So they did still get some respect. It just wasn't really in that top area like you're looking for.
For sure. Okay, so talking about the Michigan schools to wrap up this first segment, obviously we don't know what has happened between Auburn and Michigan just yet, or Michigan State and Ole Miss. Just an unfortunate draw that those games weren't on Thursday instead. But you were talking before the show, you're not so sure that Michigan State wants to play Michigan and vice versa. Michigan probably doesn't want to play Michigan State either, but it's more so for the Spartans. It's tough to beat a team 3 times in a single season.
Yeah, and for Michigan, it's just it's hard to play a tournament game with the addeds, right? Okay, this is a tournament game, so it's already a lot because our season might be over, but now we're playing our rival. that has already beat us twice this year, like that adds so much to the game. It adds nerves. It makes it a little bit more difficult. And then, like you said, for Michigan State, it's playing a team for the third time and having to beat them. Teams never like being beat once, let alone twice. Be able to beat a team the third time in a year, it's pretty hard because they start to throw the whole kitchen sink plus more at you to make sure they come out with a win. I think it's just a lot for both teams to have to play one of their biggest rivals in the tournament. Like, I think we can look back at that Duke North Carolina championship game, a handful of those, and how that affected those games because of that rivalry that's there. It's something that really you just have to pay attention to. And I think that the committee needs to do a better job of not putting bitter rivals in the same bracket. If you put them in a different region and they meet in the Final Four, that's one thing. But to put them in the same region and kind of force them to play earlier than that, I personally don't like. But, I mean, honestly, it would be scenes, absolute fireworks if Michigan and Michigan State met in the Elite Eight.
Well, on top of everything you said, and I agree with everything you said, but also if it is Michigan State, Michigan just beat the team in this tournament. Outside of Duke, like I said, that's 1A and 1B, but Michigan is coming off of not only the complete 180 that they have had since winning the Big Ten tournament, but they also just beat the team, like the toughest battle that they could possibly have until the national championship if they were able to pull it off. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen or what has happened, rather. So we will break everything down next week once we have a little bit clearer view of what's going on. But nonetheless, best of luck to both teams as the NCAA tournament continues. We'll take a break there, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Detroit Tigers, who looked okay against the Dodgers on opening day. More next here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK. All right, we're back here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK. I misspoke. We're going to talk Pistons, not Tigers. Tigers coming up just a little bit. We might dive into that if we get finished up with the Pistons early. But the Detroit basketball team is now a 5 seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs, 2 games back from Indiana. They cannot catch up to the Knicks. The highest they can be is a 4 seed. But nonetheless, Pistons are rolling at the right time. They will play the Cleveland Cavaliers later tonight. So we'll see if Cleveland is trying to get that 60th win, with some serious intention. No, excuse me. That game was last night. So we'll see, the outcome of that later for us. But nonetheless, big wins over the Spurs and Pelicans, as you should. Weird loss against the Mavs since last we talked, but also road wins over the Heat and, again, the Pelicans as well since last we talked. So the Detroit Pistons coming down the stretch and picking up some necessary dubs and stepping ahead of Milwaukee, who, as we're talking, is on a 2-game losing streak compared to the Pistons' 2-game winning streak. Detroit's kind of exactly where they want to be at this point in the season as we're staring down that final stretch. I'm actually extremely happy with where they are. If they're able to maintain, and I'm not asking you to maintain with the Pacers, I'm asking you to maintain with the Bucks. Yeah. Every game the Bucks win, you win. I'd much rather play that first playoff series in Indiana than in New York. And that's kind of what we're looking at here is, are you going to be the 5 seed or the 6 seed? Maybe Indiana slips a few games and the Pistons are able to slide up to 4 and they get to host. They get to be home field or home court. Great. But realistically, you're trying to match up against the Pacers instead of the Knicks. Sure, the Pacers just went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, but the Knicks are playing phenomenal basketball the last couple of weeks. I wouldn't really want to play the Knicks, and I don't think the Pistons match up well with the Knicks. They match up almost perfectly with the Pacers. It's a much better series for them. So you want to hang on to one of those 4 or 5 seeds. So you just got to outlast the Bucks. And we've talked about this. At this point, now it is going to come down most likely to those last 2 games. Yeah.
But it does depend on what happens over the next week. Because if the Pistons somehow beat the Cavs, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, and Toronto, I don't know that the Bucks are going to be able to be 4-0 in that same span. I'm getting a look at their schedule right now. So it's one of those situations where if they're not able to maintain, the Pistons are in a great position. It's going to be tough because they do play New York, or they played New York last night. That's going to be iffy. But then they have Atlanta, Phoenix, Philadelphia. Phoenix might be a drop. We don't know because they've been very up and down this year. So kind of just what happens over the next 4 games is something to pay attention to for both the Bucks and the Pistons. And that'll really tell us what Friday, April 11th and Sunday, April 13th have to do with the season.
I kind of look at those schedules. I feel like if I wanted to play one of those final stretches, I'd rather take the Bucks schedule over the Pistons because you got Oklahoma City in there. Minnesota can mess you up. Memphis will come to play, and then you've also got the Knicks. Knicks will probably rest at that point, but then you got 2 very serious.
Memphis ain't who you think they is.
That is probably the case.
Yeah.
But they've still got one of the most talented players on the planet. So.
He's been way off this year. Just off because he sat 50-some games or something like that for conduct off the court. He was suspended for a very large majority of the season. Yeah. So his flow has just been.
I still feel like I see
completely off.
I still feel like I see John Morant.
He's going to have highlights. He's going to have highlights because of the style of play that he uses, but he's not at that high level that he was the last couple of years. And I think it's just due to the fact that he had to sit that time to start the year. But I do agree the first 3 games here are tough, but if you're able to come out of there with 2 wins, 3 would be crazy, but 2, you're in a good spot, especially because you have Toronto, Memphis, Sacramento coming up after that. You might get lucky against the Knicks and they might start resting. So therefore, maybe you're not playing Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns that night. You're playing their backups, which could help you get a win because they already have a playoff seed locked up, so they don't necessarily need that game. So those are things to look at as well.
I will say, if you look at the losses for Milwaukee since March began, they all make sense. Orlando, Cleveland, Indiana, OKC, Golden State, Phoenix, Denver, and then they've still got some big wins. LA, the Lakers, I guess I should be specific about that. The Lakers 2 times, the Pacers once, and Denver, just a couple of days before March began. So, they've really gotten beaten up all throughout March with the talent that they've been up against. So it's no surprise that Milwaukee is 4-6 in their last 10 compared to the 6-4 record that the Pistons hold over that same length of time. But the Pistons have easily had an easier schedule over those past 10 games as well. I do want to go back to you saying that the Pistons match up better with the Pacers. I think a lot of people probably hear the idea of the Pistons playing the Pacers, a team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and kind of shudder a little bit like that's the thing to avoid. There's almost no way to play the Bucks in the postseason this season, which is less than ideal. But
I don't think so.
Well, I mean from a.
I don't like the Bucks. I don't like the Bucks matchup either. The Pistons don't really have anybody that can guard Giannis.
True.
We can the Pistons can minimize.
Most teams don't, to be fair.
Exactly. And we can minimize Damian Lillard, but we can't take him completely out of the game. And then we have no one to do anything with Giannis. Yeah. There's no point in trying to go after that matchup. And it's very similar with the Knicks. We can minimize Jalen Brunson to an extent, but we have nothing for Karl Anthony Towns. So it's one of those positions where you have to pick your poison. When it comes to the Pacers, you match up with Pascal Siakam. You match up with Tyrese Halliburton. You match up with Obi Toppin and whoever else is on that Pacers team. You don't match up that way with the Celtics, with the Knicks, with the Cavs, with the Bucks. Your best chance is to play the Pacers first round, and hopefully you're feeling good about yourselves. You're able to grab some momentum, and it leads you through a series or two, which I think is what happened with the Pacers last year. I don't think the Pacers were that good, but I think that they got a good matchup in the first round, and then they were able to hang on to that momentum and ride it through a couple of series until they ran into a team that was like, hey, we're doing it all this year. We're a good team and we're taking it. And that's what the Celtics did last year. So the Pistons are in a spot to be able to make a run based off of not only matchup, but then taking hold of that momentum and running with it.
Pistons were 1-3 against the Pacers this year. The only one they won was just after Thanksgiving, but score differentials in all of those games were a little bit tighter, but not necessarily, buzzer beaters. 133-19, the most recent matchup, 111-100 to kick off the 2025 portion of the schedule. Nonetheless, I think you look around, it's going to be a tough path no matter what for the Pistons. The success of the season is simply making it to the postseason without, and especially without even having to go through the play-in system, like to just earn a seed. Is mightily impressive for a squad that could not clear 20 wins last year. So all things being equal, you got to be happy with what the Pistons have accomplished this year, no matter what happens in the postseason after these next 9 games are finished with, and we know what that field looks like. You got to be excited about what the Pistons' future looks like beyond this season, not necessarily rely on just this season for a framework of success, I guess. So hats off to JB Bickerstaff for the job that he's done in one season. Hats off to Cade Cunningham for taking that step to become a superstar as well. If we're ready, we can go ahead and take a break and then come back and talk some Tigers. Opening day baseball. We'll do that next here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK.
Detroit sports fans, Wolverines and Spartans alike. This is your sports show, Mitten Madness, with Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes on 95.3 WBCK.
Back here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK. Baseball season is underway, and we're going to talk about the Detroit Tigers and how they performed in their opening game against the Tigers. We don't know what happened in game 2 of the series. Of course, that game happening last night, so we can't touch on that one. But we do want to pay some attention to the exciting matchup that happened that the Tigers did fall in. But first, do have to tell you about Third Coast Move Managers. Today's the day that I'm recording. Saturday morning, I'm going to be in my new house and just relaxing and not packing and not loading up a truck and doing all that other sort of stuff, because Third Coast Move Managers is helping out in such a big way with getting me from Battle Creek over here to Kalamazoo. They specialize in small moves, whether it's apartment to apartment moving or especially helping with the elderly in whether that is moving into an assisted care facility, downsizing into an apartment, real estate market preparation if they're selling their home. Those types of things are what they really specialize in, senior moving services, but they can also help with these small apartment to apartment moves similar to mine, where small family, not a lot of stuff. Let's get it all in one truck and let's get to where we're going. That's how they can help you. And if that is something that you need, head online, thirdcoastmove.com. Find them on Facebook as well, or give them a call, 269-271-3650. Big thanks to Brett and the crew for helping me out and getting me closer to this station, and so I can save on some gas because, everything's expensive these days. Shohei Ohtani is really expensive because he's really freaking good at baseball. Of course, Dodgers are at home for opening day baseball. Ohtani's going to go yard, and he did. 2 hits, RBI, home run. Fantastic day for arguably the best player in the league. But it still wasn't necessarily enough for the Dodgers to in any way dominate the Tigers. It was a 5-4 finish, but the Tigers had a lead 2-1 heading into the bottom of the 5th, and that's where the Dodgers came unglued, including a Ohtani, not an Ohtani, home run, a Hernandez home run off of Skubal with 2 on. That really put a dagger in the Tigers. Torkelson hit a homer of his own in the 7th, and that kind of helped them come back. Got another run in the 8th, but the 9th came up empty, and that's all she wrote. The Dodgers beat the Tigers 5-4, but Skubal starting 0-1 isn't the worst thing in the world. I'll say 80 pitches, 2 strikeouts, 4 or 6 hits, a little bit offbeat, I think, but you're going against one of the best teams in baseball. Spencer Torkelson, though, fantastic opening day. 4 at bats and a home run and RBI. Batted 100. Let's go. That's what you want to see after a couple of years of frustration at the bat. I will throw this out there before I toss it over to you, but Javi Baez went out for 2, and like we were saying, if Baez is still going to be a liability on this team, it's going to be a little bit more frustrating this season than it ought to be. But I will say, I think most Tiger fans come away from that opening day loss feeling pretty damn good about their team.
I feel great. Torres goes 2 for 5. We got a hit from Riley Green. Margot gave us 2 hits. Turkleson looks great, gets an RBI and a home run there. Zach McKinstry was able to get a hit. Carpenter back out on the field. I think that's a big thing there, is that he was back out on the field. It's huge to see him back out and playing, and hopefully we can keep him and Torkelson healthy. I think that'll help moving forward. And I mean, I'm not ever going to be upset at Tariq Skubal.
No.
It was the Dodgers, and he gave up 4 runs. It kind of makes sense. He only walked 1. He struck out 2, but he threw 55 strikes out of 80 pitches.
I mean, Blake Snell was way worse.
Phenomenal. That is phenomenal. So I will take that kind of pitching from Tariq Skubal every day of the week. And so I'm pretty happy with knowing that we could keep up with the best team in baseball at the moment. So that just gives a very great outlook for the rest of the season, knowing that this team can compete with the best,
especially when it's like it's good on good. This is opening day baseball. Like this is as healthy as you're going to be. This is as good as you're going to be for until very late in the season when the heat starts to ramp up and you start to feel the momentum of a playoff push and a championship run and those types of things. When you can stare down a Ohtani homer, when you can stare down Hernandez hitting a 3-run shot, and still compete and almost come back from that, get Blake Snell out of the game out of 5 innings because you get 9 guys on base within those first 5 innings. What reason do you have to not be excited about what the Tigers have going on this season? Sure, they could full well start the season 0-3 because it's a Dodgers opening, series. But I think, when you look at the fact that you just competed that strongly with, the reigning champs, the undisputed best team in baseball, you got to take that with you and apply that throughout the season, I think, and lean on the strengths of your guys. Spencer Torkelson's not going to give up 4 runs in every game that he starts. That's for damn sure. We'll get to see the rest of this pitching staff over the next few days as well, and that pitching staff looks fantastic. I mean, you get to come off of Skubal and then go to Flaherty and then go to Olsen. You feel pretty good about that through a 3-game series against LA. I think they pick up a win at some point over there. And then I think they get back on track out in Seattle. And then they're going to come back home and get things going with Chicago, pick up 3 wins there and get on with the season. I think even on a loss, even 5-4 and just coming off of 1 game and a 182 game season, I think it's about as good of a start as Detroit could have asked for, to be honest.
Yeah, this is the only other thing that could have happened is you could have won this game. That's the only other better start you can get. But you do still have 2 more games against the Dodgers. I think that if you come out of here with 1 or 2 wins, you're looking great. And then you're going up to play the Mariners, who have started off pretty well into the season as well. So take advantage of this West Coast trip and just, build the excitement to come home and play in Comerica Park. if you're able to steal a couple wins on this road trip, it's only going to give you a good boost heading back home.
All right, unrelated, and I know they haven't played a home game yet, but Tigers taking down the script Tigers off the billboard and put the Comerica Park sign up there. Awful.
That is not unrelated. We're talking about the Tigers. And I've been like clenching my fist over and over since I've seen it. Like, it is the worst decision ever.
I mean, you want to talk about triggered. Like, DJ legitimately started to have a tick over that.
It is so triggering. Like, that Tiger script has been there for as long as I've known about baseball.
Right.
And it's like, you don't take that kind of thing away. You just add another Comerica Park sign somewhere else.
It's like putting a roof on PNC Park. Like, you know what I mean?
Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? It was like the new SoFi Stadium having like half a open thing. Like, is it open or is it closed? Pick one. That's the dumbest thing ever. This is stupid. We had no reason to take the sign away. To me, you just add another Comerica Park sign somewhere else.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in the park, but you don't take, or you know what? They wanted it there. Cool. You take the Tiger sign and you put it where the old Comerica Park sign was.
Right.
Then we have no issues
That's
because it's
solved.
still there.
You think they're gonna put it back up?
No, they're going to auction it and make a bunch of money off of it. I guarantee it.
Well, I mean,
I don't have the money to pay for it.
I'll say when the Steelers took down the Heinz ketchup bottles, it was pretty significant uproar. Like, that is,
but that was different because it had been sold to a new company. It was no longer Heinz Stadium. Like, but that makes sense.
They did work back with Heinz and still incorporate them into the stadium, just not where they used to be,
which makes total sense. This is a totally different scenario.
Right. We're also not talking about legality and contracts or whatnot. We're just talking about the team just doing something that the fans aren't happy about. So I imagine they're going to put it back up somewhere.
I think they're going to sell it.
I think that would be stupid.
I think that they don't care. I think that they don't really care. Because why'd you take it down in the first place if you cared? It ain't going back up.
Maybe they didn't know how much people would care. I don't. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, it's time to make our picks. A lot of good games coming up, and we'll make our decisions on who's going to win and who's going to lose. We'll see who's right in the end next here on Mitten Madness. 95.3 WBCK.
95.3 WBCK.
All right, we're back here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK. Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes, and we are set to make our picks. We got 4 Sweet 16 women's games, and then the 2 Elite 8 men's games that we know are going to happen. We'll pick those here in just a moment. First, DJ is going to update us on those standings, where we sit a few weeks into this season of picks.
I'm really upset because I could have been 6-0 if it wasn't for St. John's in Wisconsin. I went 4-2. You came in at 3-3. I've inched 1 game closer. I am currently sitting at 21-15. You are sitting at 23-13.
Ooh, it's getting a little tight.
It's tight.
I mean, not just the race, but like the records. I don't know. Like you go 3-3 and 4-2 a few times in a row. That record starts to look.
You start looking real close to 500.
Yeah. I don't want to be 500. Like a little bit closer to like 750, which is where we usually hang out.
Yeah.
These games are tough to pick, though.
They are.
Anything can happen in March Madness. Let's get things started off. You told me it's probably one of the most exciting games of the weekend, men's or women's. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, a 3 seed in Region 3. Are they playing down in Birmingham, Sweet Home Alabama? TCU, the 2-seeded Horned Frogs. That's the matchup that awaits them later today at 1 p.m. DJ, the Irish have a nearly 80% chance of beating the Horned Frogs, but we got Christians and Catholics out on the court. Who you got, DJ? Completely throw off your rhythm there at the end. I know it.
Having to do this. I really do. TCU has been phenomenal this year. 33-3. Haley Van Lith, easily one of the best players in the entire country. They're on a 5-game win streak. They haven't lost in quite some time. But Haley's got a little bit of help over there, but she ain't got what Notre Dame's got. Hannah Hidalgo, a 2-time first-team All-American. Her and Juju Watkins are the first two women to ever do that. I don't even think men have done that. To be an All-American first team in both your freshman and sophomore year. Like that's insane. And then they also have Olivia Miles, another first-team All-American in the country. The best backcourt in the country, plays in South Bend, Indiana. And then you have Sonia Citron, also added to that. Notre Dame plays phenomenal defense. They're up and down the floor. They cause a lot of pressure. They can shoot the three. They have great ball handling. I hate to do it because I do think TCU has a chance, but I cannot pick against Notre Dame.
I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna pick Notre Dame because that's what I do these days. All of a sudden, but I'll say they're gonna have fun down there at the Legacy Arena at BJCC. Fantastic arena down in Birmingham, Alabama. Should be a good game. Tune in and watch it. ABC, ESPN Plus, or Disney Plus if you want to catch a great women's basketball game. All right, DJ, what game you got next?
We're gonna cool things down a little bit, and we're gonna go with a matchup that should have been absolute fireworks. That has been dampened by one of the most significant injuries we've seen in women's basketball in quite some time. Juju Watkins does tear her ACL, so she's going to be done for the rest of March Madness. We won't see her until sometime next season. USC Trojans are going to take on Kansas State. ESPN is still giving them a 72.3% chance to win this game, and they are a 1.5-point favorite. I don't know if I trust it. What are your thoughts going into this game, knowing that arguably the best player in the country is not suiting up for her team?
Let me make sure I got my timeline right. She did tear her ACL against Mississippi State in the most recent game, so this is our first game without her. I'm going to say that I think her teammate's going to show out for her. I think they've at least got one game in them to go out there, play with some heart, and pick up a dub for their leader, for their ace, their all-star. It sucks, man, that Juju got hurt, especially in this situation, because this was kind of supposed to be her year to take on that extra stardom, the rise of women's basketball. Somebody had to take over for the Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese sort of era that had existed recently. And Juju Watkins was in a position to do that and really was taking advantage of that situation. So it's unfortunate with her injury, but I think given her presence and what she has brought to USC women's basketball, I think her teammates will stand up for her and pick up a dub here against Kansas State. It's tough. Do you go with the emotions or the logic?
I'm not seeing anything impressive from Kansas State. And I think that is what's swaying my decision to stick with USC here. I was going to slide Kansas State because USC, it's a huge loss to not have Juju on the floor anymore. But they do have some talent around her. And I think had I seen just a little bit more from Kansas State, I would feel better about picking them. But I just haven't seen enough, so I'm going to roll with USC.
Yeah, I'll say you don't get a 1 seed because of one player. It certainly helps, but that's the way it goes. And I also will say that there's a pretty significant difference between a 1 and a 5 seed in women's basketball as compared to men's. It's just the reality of the situation. Next up, another 1 and 5 game. The Texas Longhorns. Actually, this is a full-on SEC matchup in the Sweet 16 in Birmingham, Alabama. Another solid matchup, I would say. The Texas Longhorns are the 1 seed, 33-3 on the season. They're going to host, technically as the home team, the Tennessee Lady Vols, 24-9 on the season. A lot more history in women's basketball for Tennessee, but Texas is the 1 seed here, DJ. Who you got?
I got Texas. Texas is 33-3. They have played phenomenal basketball this year. I've watched this Texas team take on South Carolina, take on LSU, take on Kentucky and some of the other big dogs in that women's SEC, and they have been top notch. They are returning to a very good basketball team, and they're playing a team in Tennessee that has a storied history, but just hasn't quite been the Tennessee that we're used to. They're making their way back to that, having a 24-9 year this year, but Texas is literally just one step ahead. I mean, opening up at 8.5-point favorites and the line staying at 7.5 kind of tells you a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head is. You're not going to get quite that kind of spread over Tennessee if it isn't clearly warranted, just given the nature. Tennessee's in this spot every year. Texas maybe not so much, but I think the wise thing to do here is to go with the Longhorns. Yeah, they're both going to be wearing putrid orange in Alabama anyway, so not going to get a lot of cheers from any neutral parties, regardless.
That is going to get us over to our last Sweet 16 women's game of the weekend. Another really good game. Another 2-3 matchup. This one going to be going down in Spokane, Washington. The number 3 seeded Oklahoma Sooners, 27-7 on the year, taking on historic, storied, the best of the best, 2 seeded UConn Huskies, 33-3 on the year. UConn opened up as 14.5-point favorites. They currently sit at 15.5-point favorites. ESPN only given a 12.2% chance for the upset. Will Gino Auriemma lead his team back to another Elite Eight? Or will Paige Beckers, Ozzie Fudd, and the rest, Sarah Strong and the rest of the Huskies see their season end early unexpectedly?
I'll say, first of all, props to Oklahoma for putting the bang thing on Iowa. Iowa's not a bad school without Caitlin Clark, very talented. And to beat them that soundly in the NCAA tournament is mightily impressive. That said, UConn is on a different planet than most programs that make it to the tournament. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. UConn, and they might just cover.
I would not be surprised to see them cover. Ozzie Fudd, Sarah Strong, Paige Beckers, and company have been phenomenal this year. They've only lost 3 games this year, and they weren't losses that like they didn't get destroyed in any of these games. These were, and they didn't lose to anyone they shouldn't. Yeah. They lost to number 8 Notre Dame by 9 points. They lost to 7-seeded USC at the time by 2 points, and they lost to 19-seeded Tennessee by 4. And I believe that game they were dealing with some injuries in that February game as well against Tennessee. So UConn is poised to win this game handily, and I don't think there's going to be any concern there. I'm taking UConn as well.
Did you peep that first round score for them?
Yeah. I watched that game.
103-34 over Arkansas State. I know it's Sun Belt school. I get it.
They were up 50 at halftime. Whew. And Arkansas State made a buzzer beater 3 at halftime and 1 at the end of the game. So really, this game could have easily been 103-28.
Yeah.
Whew. Ridiculous.
Yeah. I would say so. All right, we got 2 Elite Eight matchups to pick here. One of them is going to be very painful for me. The Alabama Crimson Tide will take on the Duke Blue Devils in the Elite Eight matchup. They'll be at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. Stay away from the airport. You'll have a fine time in Newark. The Blue Devils, obviously, Cooper Flagg is one of the, you said it earlier, and I've literally never heard you use the word before, generational. And that is perked up ears over here because Mark Sears, as good as Sears is not generational. He is quite inconsistent at times. But if he is fantastic and rises to the challenge against Flagg, could make for one of the more entertaining, high scoring matchups we'll see in this tournament this year. 1 versus 2, DJ. Who's going to the Final Four?
I didn't even have number 2 seeded Alabama in my Elite Eight. So obviously I'm not picking them to go to the Final Four, but we talked about it earlier. They don't have anyone to match the Duke Blue Devils. I'm going to go with Duke.
Yeah, this is one of those rare times where I decided a long time ago that Alabama was not going to win this game. Like I said earlier, I already have 4 of my 8 teams in the Elite Eight. And I'm just waiting for those 4 games to be played last night, if that makes any sense.
Facts.
I picked Duke to win. I'm not coming off of that. I'm going to be rooting for the Tide. I would love to see Alabama make the Final Four once again. We don't get to do that very often. Duke's done it plenty of times. That said, Duke has Cooper Flagg, and that's not to be ignored. I do think the Blue Devils will beat my Crimson Tide, who have had a frustrating season in a lot of ways.
That takes us to our last game of the week. Texas Tech Red Raiders, 28-8 on the year, 3 seeded in the tournament, taking on 1 seeded Florida Gators, 33-4. This game going on TBS, 6:09 p.m. down at the Chase Center in San Francisco, California. Florida 6.5-point favorites, which is what they opened up at. They have a 59.6% chance in comparison to 40.4 for those Red Raiders. Does JT Toppin and Hawkins have enough for the Red Raiders to beat Clayton Jr. and Condon of the Gators?
I feel like this is like the third or fourth. If you watch one game this weekend, it should be this one. Florida Texas A&M is a crazy good matchup, though. And I predicted it to happen. It is in my Elite Eight. And I already picked Florida to win. So I'm glad that one is made easier for me. I don't have to think about it anymore beyond that because that is a tough matchup to pick. No matter what, these two teams are going to go to war. I think it's going to be fun. Opposite of Duke, Alabama, this will probably be low scoring, somewhere in like the low 80s between these two. Florida's going to win. I don't have much more beyond that, other than watch this game because it's going to be fun.
After watching Florida play in their first couple of games in the tournament, they're a fun team. They're up and down the floor. They're exciting. They want to speed the game up and make it a fun game that a team can't quite keep up with them in. And I think they're going to be able to do that to Texas Tech. I have Florida winning as well, which gives us the same picks down the board. Duke, Florida, Notre Dame, Texas Tech, UConn, and USC. Get us into the weekend, sir.
Keep it simple. We'll be back next week, 10 a.m., same time. That's Da'Jzon Hughes. I'm Jacob Harrison. We'll see you then. Y'all take it easy and enjoy Madness.
Join Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. for Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. Miss the show or want to run it back? Stream Mitten Madness on demand on the WBCK app. Sponsored by airwaycashforjunkcars.com.